About violence.
You were making the point, Pixie, that women, because the way they are raised to be more aware of risk,
like risk adverse. Yeah.
Okay. There was another part that you said after that I had a point on, but it's evaded me. What did you say?
She was saying that if women are brought up to be cautious around men, which is why they potentially have less conflicts with men than when you were saying that men get attacked more frequently than women.
But you could also argue that men have there's something within a lot of men which is like a white knight thing, where it's like told never to hit a woman. In fact, I think women have certain privileges on the street. For example, like you, for example, let's say you're walking in some bar or nightclub district, and a guy comes up to you and slaps you across the face. There are totally strange men that will intervene on your behalf and essentially be your bodyguards for free that will defend you. However, if I just get slapped in the face by some dude and he starts trying to fuck me up, nobody's coming to save me. So I think that's actually a privilege that women have. You basically, in a public area, you basically have male bodyguards that will intervene on your behalf that are total strangers.
I don't know. Okay. Like, I agree to you to a certain extent, especially like if a woman were to slap you, I highly doubt that you'll have any interveners. But if a random man slaps you, I think you'll have a high likelihood that you're also going to have strangers intervene.
No.
And then also there's been
Police,
multiple issues,
Police.
specifically during COVID, like when they started letting the trains run again, where women were being, essayed on the trains in New York, and sometimes for many, many stops, and passerbyers were videotaping it, and nobody was doing anything to help these women. So women do experience that as well. Yeah, I'll agree with you that in general, strangers are more likely to help a woman being beaten than a man being beaten by a woman. But there's women definitely experience times where strangers will not help them.
I'm not saying that there's never a situation where a woman is being physically assaulted by a man and that it's impossible that the guy doesn't intervene. However, I would say it's very likely if there's other men around seeing a woman being beaten by a man, they are very likely to not just intervene, but beat the fucking shit out of the guy who's beating on the woman. Whereas if I'm getting attacked by another man, I don't know why you flip the genders. If I'm getting attacked by another man, it's very, very unlikely that other men are going to intervene to stop.
And just to say something on that, so for example, when that situation does arise, when a woman is being beaten by a man and there aren't any defenders, oftentimes there could be missing context from the situation. So did you guys hear about the woman who got bricked in the face recently? She literally
we talked about that. Yeah.
Oh, you don't want to talk about it? We don't have to. I was just using it as an example because she was literally saying men weren't standing up for me, men are pussies, they're cowards, this and that, trying to paint this narrative, but there was a lot more to the context than...
Mike Davis donated $100.
Hold on just a sec.
People
Thank you,
be
Mike
thinking
Davis.
I'm anti-women when the fact is I'm anti-everybody. Most men are completely useless working dead-end jobs just to throw that bread at some ethot. But they're self-aware and know they're losers. 300+ pound women think they special. Crazy.
All right, Mike Davis. There you go. The resident. He's on something. Thank you, Mike Davis. Appreciate it.
I think that although in theory it sounds like, oh yeah, like, men will be valiant and stand up for women. There's a reason why women are even given advice like, hey, if you're being assaulted or if some like strange guy's trying to attack you, instead of yelling like help, like I'm being essayed, instead they say you should scream fire, because like there is like the bystander effect. There is a lot of people, both men and women, in the face of atrocities freeze or think that somebody else called the police, somebody else is going to do something about it regardless of gender.
I kind of want to talk about why men defend women when they see them being harmed on the streets. I think most of the time, like the average woman's height is like 5'4" versus the average male height is 5'9", and there's a lot more muscle mass when you're a guy in general. And I feel like people tend to want to defend people who are
Tiny.
like just smaller. Like it's like if you see someone literally like beating the shit out of a kid, or someone who is, you know, that cannot physically defend themselves, then you're more inclined to help. If someone's beating on an old person in a wheelchair, it's like, hey, stop that. So,
yeah, I agree with that. I think if there's a disparity in size or strength, I think there's perhaps even if it's two men, there might be a greater likelihood of intervention. And certainly your examples with if it's someone who's elderly, a child, I actually, that's a fair point. You said you had a question for me before you went up to.
Oh yeah, I was wondering how many people you share your location with on your phone. Like just Find My Friends if you have an iPhone or Android.
How many people? I don't think I share my location with anybody.
So I want to bring up that most women share their locations with other women and friends just as like a primary safety. Like, hey, if I go on this date, this is where I'm at. Something could happen, and it's just we're taught to always be cautious because things can happen, and then we get blamed if something does happen. A lot of times, like if someone drugs our drink, or if someone ends up essaying us, like it's typically like, oh, we didn't take enough precaution. You always have to have an out, like, hey, like I'm right here, come pick me up, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah. It was.
All right. Okay. Let's fucking talk about something else. Hold on. Let me see if there's any chats. Let me get rid of this.
It's just men don't go to dangerous places.
I mean, as far as, okay, just really quick, me personally, like me not sharing my location, I don't go to bars, I don't go to clubs, I don't go to parties. So I'm not putting myself in potentially violent situations that often happen when you are like, so it's plausible that a girl that 3 times a week she's getting fucking tanked at bars and nightclubs, it's probably likely that she's going to be sharing her location with more people because she is putting herself in those sorts of, when you're out at nightclubs and bars and parties, like it is a vulnerable position for both men and women.
Yeah,
I was gonna say, I don't share my location with anyone.
Oh, really?
I don't put myself in those situations where I feel like I would need to. I used to share it with my ex.
You might need to adjust the volume
and
on
to
her.
be honest, when I came over here and I traveled to California, I kind of thought about that. I'm like, wow, he was the only person who actually had my location, and I'm here in this state where I don't know anyone. And I did think about that for a second, but to your point, no, I didn't. I'm not with a bunch of my friends. It was with one person.
I mean, I don't really go to a bunch of clubs or bars or anything, but I always share my location no matter what with like my best friends, with just people that, even if we're just like having dinner or something, like, oh, where did you park? And it's just like very casual for me.
Right.
But maybe it's like the location or like age thing. I don't know.
I actually do share my location with a lot of people too, and I think it might be like a physical location thing because I live in the middle of LA. I'm not gonna share where, but I don't feel safe walking around sometimes, going to the grocery store by myself sometimes, which is why I share my locations with friends.
Also, I would point out, I think you mentioned the word feel, right? So I do think it's the case that women feel less safe, but like if you look at the actual data, the actual statistics, as far when it comes to violent crime across the board, generally speaking, men are more likely to be victims of violent crime. They're more likely to be mugged.
fair.
So, but then you don't want to be harassed either, even if they're not going to stab you. You don't want someone following home and like hit on you either.
Yeah, sure, yeah. That doesn't sound, you don't want someone following you, of course.